in my mind, out of any vehicle they can possibly get right now, this is probably the best bang for your buck. What is up, guys? Matthew, Actual Exotic Cars. So today I kind of want to talk about the $3,000 diesel manual transmission pickup trucks that the U.S. is currently trying to ban, one state at a time. So what are these? These are known as Kei trucks. I'm sure a lot of my viewers have probably heard about these. I have mentioned them in some of my past videos, but I've never really dived deep into this topic at all. And basically, recently, in the last month or so, the state of Michigan has joined the list of growing states of banning these Kei trucks, also Kei vans as well. And just kind of wanted to share my thoughts on this topic, as well as how to get around these bans, because there's always a way around them. And also, I kind of want to talk about the reasons for these bans, and it definitely kind of corresponds with one of my last videos, the American car dealership scan, and there is definitely a link between these two things happening. So, what is a Kei truck? Kei trucks are basically these tiny little trucks. I'll have some footage of them on the screen here. And very efficient. Again, these things are very tiny. First time I seen them, I was working on a car ferry a few years ago. There's a full truckload of like 20 on them or something on a car hauler, and I'm like, what the heck is that? But very efficient, very good gas mileage. And the best thing about these is they're very cheap. So basically, where do you buy them? I mean, honestly, they're so common in the U.S. right now. Any like marketplace, or probably even a Craigslist or something like that, you could probably find them used. I mean, they're everywhere. And I guess the way you would import them, probably through a website such as a car from Japan or TBC or some of these other websites that I mentioned in the past. They are technically gray market vehicles, which means you can legally drive them in the U.S., but they were never necessarily sold for the U.S. So that is what these are categorized as. But again, these are four-wheel drive. Look at the prices of some of these. This is everything, including shipping to the port. $4,000. This is $6,000. $4,500. Some of these are down in like $3,000. Again, this is four-wheel drive. 0.6 liter manual transmission, only has 40,000 miles on it. The price is about $1,500. By the time you ship it to the port, it's about $3,300. It'd probably even be cheaper, I would imagine, if you ship it to the West Coast. So anyway, these are extremely cheap and affordable, especially compared to the U.S. car market, especially compared to the U.S. truck market. I've spoken in the past about how disappointed I have been about current U.S. auto manufacturing and the state of affairs right now between the trucks and the SUV market. Like, it's all these little efficient cars that do the job, and then you go over to the U.S. It's all these vehicles that just don't, I mean, if you drive a half-ton pickup truck for Europe, it just looks stupid. When you think about it, most people, one of these trucks would be good enough for what they need. You could probably haul a couch. If you need to haul anything in the back, you're fine. I would imagine most people don't need a gigantic full-ton pickup truck. Even the half-ton pickup trucks of today are pretty much about the size of a full-ton or a three-quarters tons. A couple decades ago, I mean, even the smaller trucks, Rangers, Colorados, etc., Tacomas, are literally what a half-ton truck was 10, 20 years ago. So it's getting absolutely ridiculous. So that is what a Kei truck is. In my mind, they are a very good deal for what you're getting. And it's very practical. Again, you're getting great gas mileage. You're probably getting in the mid-60s. Diesel, some of them are diesel, some of them are gas as well, but they're fairly reliable. They're Japanese, so they're reliable. The different makes of these, I mean, Subaru, Mazda, I think Toyota has some, Datsu. So basically, the makes of these are very reliable and renowned companies that most of them even sell other vehicles within the U.S. And the fact that they're trying to ban them, I feel like, is absolutely ridiculous. So again, in my mind, out of any vehicle they can possibly get right now, this is probably the best bang for your buck. Again, registering these wouldn't be too difficult either. I have made a video in the past on how to register any vehicle within the U.S. That'll be up on the screen here. And the only two forms outside of that you need are the EPA form 3520-1 and the DO2 form HS7. That is it. And as long as it's over 25 years old and unmodified, theoretically, according to U.S. guidelines, you should be good to go, dependent on your state. California, beware. So, on to states trying to ban them. One website which has been really good and up to date with that is the autopeon.com. I'm hoping I am pronouncing that right. But it seems like whenever one of these bans state by state happens, they're right on top of it. Michigan has been the next state, unfortunately, to enforce this. And this is a full article basically on everything which is happening, joining in. And basically what happens is you're going to get a letter in the mail basically saying your title is revoked. So imagine getting one of these letters in the mail right here. It has examples of some of the vehicles saying that they can only be titled as ORVs, at least in the state of Michigan, which is ridiculous because these vehicles were not made for off-road vehicles. And what they're doing is there's also mini trucks that are designed for off-road vehicles. They're confusing the two. They don't realize there's a difference between a mini truck, and a K truck, which there's a gigantic difference. These vehicles don't have the clearance for it. You're not going to find the proper tires or whatnot. Yes, I get it that they're 4x4. They're not made for off-road, and a lot of them can actually hit mid-60s, which is above the minimum highway speed. And actually, even like most highways, for example, the minimum engine you can have for a motorcycle is like 125 or something. You're going to be going way faster in one of these than you will be in a 125cc motorcycle. I can guarantee you that. And a lot of minimum speed limits, at least on federal highways, is about 55. You're going to be going over 55 in a mini truck. So this entire argument is absolutely bogus, and you can tell that the morons that hand out these letters, or not necessarily the people that hand out the letters, but the people that put these laws together, have no idea what they're talking about, and they probably don't have an automotive background at all. So basically, why is this happening? Again, Michigan's not the only state to do this. There are GoFundMes to try to say this. We'll see what happens. I'm not necessarily too assured that this is going to do anything, unfortunately, and I don't want to sound pessimistic. But the people that we are battling are very large and have gigantic pockets. So Georgia is also another gigantic state. This is an article right here that kind of covers that, where they're actually trying to sue the state over the K-car ban. And this is another decent article I feel like reading. One at least encouraging piece of news, Texas actually did reverse their law on that. So within a few days, revised policy should be distributed, blah, blah, blah. Basically, any mini trucks, aka K trucks, 25 years or older, to be titled and registered. So there is a list that you can go online that goes state by state and tells you which states these are legal in. That goes through each state, state by state. It tells you which states that these vehicles are fully legal in. It tells you which states where these are restricted and which state these are completely illegal in. So some of these states, for example, you might not be able to take them on the highway. So like Arkansas, for example, they're completely legal, but you cannot take them on the highway. Kind of have mixed feelings on that, but I sort of understand that. I'm not necessarily too mad as long as you can drive them around. Some states, for example, let's say Iowa here, they're completely illegal. So basically you can look up your state on here and see what the status of it is. And you can see nothing's like, there's no across the board conformity at all. It's completely random. And not even necessarily along party lines either. So, again, I would check your state just to see what the status of these are. And it's kind of concerning, too, if you plan on buying one of these. Again, like I said, they're extremely practical if you want to make it a daily driver or something. And, you know, you're getting the mid-60s gas mileage. You can haul stuff in the back. It's still a pickup truck. You know, it's a very practical vehicle. Before you buy one, you need to know that, again, all these can change on a dime. A few months ago, Michigan was legal. Now they're illegal. That could happen, you know, let's say you live in Kentucky. That could happen to you. Kansas, that can happen to you. So you definitely need to have a contingency plan. And I would not make it my only sole driver, because the last thing you want to do is get a letter in the mail from the DMV saying, sorry, your vehicle's illegal now, no more title for you, which is absolutely ridiculous in my mind. I can't imagine that happening to me. So basically, I kind of want to cover why these vehicles are getting banned to begin with. And you got to realize it's not a safety thing, and it's definitely not at all an emissions thing. So in my mind, that doesn't make sense, as a lot of these states are citing safety as a concern. But you have no issues if you want to ride a motorcycle. None at all. So you're telling me that a motorcycle is more safe than a K truck? Absolute baloney. That is not true at all. So who's behind this? Of course, there's always somebody behind it, and this kind of ties into my American car dealership scam video. Well, it's lobbyists and special interest groups. Surprise, surprise. So again, this article, the Autopeon, did a fantastic job covering all this, because the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, Automakers, also known as the American Association of Corrupt Losers. So basically, if you read this article, non-government, non-profit lobbying organization, blah, 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 all 50 states, Canada, Mexico, so they have their tentacles everywhere. They've been studying these vehicles. They didn't know how to handle them. Flood of cheap 25 mile per hour speed limited off-road utility trucks from China. See, these aren't even the same vehicles, though. So they're confusing the mini truck off-road vehicle ATV types with the Japanese Kei trucks, which are completely different animals, completely different vehicles. So basically, they're mixing them because they have no idea what they're doing. I'm sure they're getting kickbacks from the big three and automakers because they're putting a big dent in their sales. Again, how much is a brand new half-ton pickup truck, which again, you don't even need 70% of the space in that thing. Like 40 grand, 50 grand base. I mean, something ridiculous, especially by the time you add all the taxes and fees and whatnot. Versus getting one of these, you could probably get one of these imported direct to your doorstep for like 4 or 5 grand, and you're getting way better gas mileage. It's way better for the environment, and it's 100% more practical. But no, they don't want you to do that. How dare you? So this is basically the main lobbying group that has been responsible for all these state bans. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if they're going state to state, trying to ban all these. And their big argument here is it doesn't meet safety standards. So the FMVSS is basically the American safety standards, and that is what their big worry is. Again, like I said, that's absolute baloney in my mind, because you can ride a motorcycle, but you can't ride an enclosed vehicle. So even in my mind, if you had to have a motorcycle endorsement to drive one of these, I would be perfectly fine with that. But the fact that they don't want you to drive them at all tells me that something's up. They do not give a crap about your safety. And again, like I said, it's actually, if you think about it, it's way less practical. U.S. trucks in general, or just any trucks that are legally not gray market trucks, but that are sold in the U.S., the gas mileage is way worse. The emissions are way, way worse. They take up way more space. I mean, honestly, even the garage space, one lot, I mean, you could probably have 2 of these vehicles in one parking spot. So basically every single metric, the American big vehicles, or the big vehicles, again, Toyota Tundras or whatnot, that are meant to be sold in the U.S. market are way worse. And most people don't need them. Most people, for what they are doing, don't need a full half-ton pickup truck. But unfortunately, with everybody banning all these mini trucks, it's kind of screwing all the consumers over. So again, on the bottom here, what can you do? So this is basically saying, it's sad, anti-import laws, blah, 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 blah. If you're interested in helping, donate here. Thankfully, there's other fine See, this is basically wanting grassroots, pro-car politicians in your states. So there is a precedent. Again, enthusiasts, what they did in Texas, the huge win. North Carolina, I guess they had their own victory. So the good news is that some of these laws are getting reversed. So Texas, they said North Carolina, I haven't looked into that, but it wouldn't surprise me if that happened as well. So there is some good news about this. What can you do outside of it? So let's say you live in, Michigan. I think Maine was another big one that was brought up. Georgia is like a huge one right now, where they're really trying to fight against the DMV and the government on that one. So let's say you live in one of these states and you want to have one of these mini trucks, or Kei trucks, I should say. What do you do? How do you get around it? There's always a way around. So it depends how far you are willing to go. First thing I'm going to cover, getting it titled and registered in another U.S. state. So back in the day, and when I mean back in the day, I mean like a couple of years ago, Vermont was the place to go. So you could basically go have the DMV services through the mail. Vermont didn't issue for certain vehicles. They didn't even issue titles. You could just have a Vermont registration. It would be good enough. And you did not have to have a legal address in Vermont. So you could literally just send something in the mail and they would mail you back a plate. So Vermont, again, a couple of years ago, would have been a great place to do this. All the YouTubers, streamers, all basically the famous car influencers were talking about this. Doug DeMuro, Haggerty, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, a lot of people were violating this loophole, if you will, because they were starting to register stolen cars and whatnot. So unfortunately, in 2023, this was closed. So here is a nice picture of a plate literally getting mailed to you out of state. And unfortunately, Vermont's not an option any longer, unfortunately. So what other states can you go to? Here's a list of states that do not require your license to match your registration. So basically, if I understand correctly, in these states, depending on the rules, you should be able to register a vehicle without having to have a license or residency within that state. So if you look at the list of these states and then compare them to the list of the states where these vehicles are still legal, you should be able to find a state where you would be able to register the vehicle and have a driver's license within, whatever residence you live. So let's say you live in Pennsylvania, you can't have one of these. Find one of these states where you are able to register one of these vehicles. So let's look here. Okay, Kentucky, it says you can. So I live in Pennsylvania, but I'll drive over to Kentucky and register it real quick. So that is another option or possibility. What else can you do in the U.S.? Another big one that a lot of people don't really know about is the Montana LLC loophole. So what do I mean by that? So usually for a lot of really expensive cars where people don't necessarily want to pay sales tax or whatnot, they'll register a vehicle in Montana. And the whole thing of this is you start an LLC in Montana. Using that LLC, and you can do all this by mail, by the way. Using that LLC, you can register the vehicle in that LLC, and Montana doesn't have a sales tax on cars or a registration tax, if I understand correctly. So this is why they call it, again, $1 Montana. This is just one of the many services that offer this. If you go online, there's a lot of them. I have not used any of these. I cannot vouch for any of these, but you can go online, I'm sure, and compare and contrast the cost, benefits, and risk of all of these. But basically speaking, a lot of people do this so they can save on their taxes. Well, you can also do this if you want to register a vehicle that's not legal in your state. For example, in California, it is very difficult to import a lot of gray market vehicles because they have very strict emission laws, and it's like anything 1963 or older is exempt, where almost every other state is like 25 years or older, so it's like 98, 99. Well, if you register in Montana, by mail, by the way, you don't even have to go to the state. You can go through one of these services, they'll take care of all the paperwork and everything for you, and then you don't have to worry about it. So technically your vehicle is registered through an LLC, and you have a Montana license plate. So that is your U.S. options. There's also foreign options. So it depends how crazy you want to get with this whole thing. But if you look at the free entry into the U.S., non-residents may import a vehicle duty-free, blah, 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 for up to a year. So using this law, what you could do is start a foreign LLC or corporation, let's say in Canada or something, and then you could have that LLC or corporation. It can't be you, so I don't even know necessarily if you could do an LLC, you would 100% should be able to register to a corporation or something, and then technically ship it over temporarily to the U.S. for a year. Also, you wouldn't have to pay U.S. registration taxes or fees. That's another big benefit. That's something I was even thinking about doing because OAS America is technically a Georgian company. If I register my vehicles through OAS America, technically, which I'm not going to do, but it might save me, I think Michigan registration is like $30, $40 a year or something. Then you wouldn't have to pay that because Georgia does not have a yearly registration fee, and a lot of European countries don't, for that matter. So that is another option that you could do. Register it to a foreign entity, and then like a foreign abroad entity, and then use that entity to bring into the U.S. for a year. And if I understand correctly, like, for example, if you live in a border state like I do, once a year, drive to Canada real quick for a day or two, drive back, and you don't have to worry about it. So that is a lot of work. This is probably the most, I guess, cost-prohibitive option. Still an option. I don't know necessarily how well it would work. And if you look at the form itself, you do need to have a passport number, country of issue, and it does say that the box here, I'm a non-resident of the U.S. In my mind, again, if it is a completely separate entity like a corporation that's not within the U.S., then you might be good to go, but don't quote me on that. It's just an idea, and kind of a wild idea I had about a year ago trying to get around U.S. taxes. I also read somewhere else that if it's a NAFTA, you have to leave the NAFTA zone in general, which means you would have to leave the U.S. and Mexico, which means you'd have to drive to Belize every year, which would make it completely not worth it, or Guatemala or something. But when I was doing research for this video, I could not find any of that anywhere, so do not necessarily quote me on that. Next option, which might be the easiest option, would be going through Canada. So Canada, again, neighbor to the U.S., this website right here, 3 Canadian provinces that allow you to register a vehicle in your name as a tourist, so British Columbia, Quebec, and New Brunswick. So what would be the advantages of going through Canada? Well, Canada, first thing, has a lot friendlier import laws, surprisingly. The vehicle only needs to be 15 years old, so you can get a way newer vehicle. This is even something I might even think about through OAS America if I want to have a newer van or a Lada or something like that. Then I might be able to import it and then put it under a Canadian address, and I could have something that's 15 years old compared to 25 years old. And if you look here, as far as I know, Canada has not done any of these K-Truck bans at all. And there are companies here that basically say, hey, we'll support you with all the paperwork. It only needs to be 15 years or older, and everything will be street legal. That's all you need to do. And it doesn't look like there's any restrictions or no highway or anything like that either. So technically speaking, I guess for me, like a New Brunswick or probably Quebec would probably be the closest. I don't know if I want to deal with them though, because it's the French. But anyway, I don't speak French. So that might be one of the easiest routes, is probably if you're really serious about having one of these and you're having difficulties getting one of these registered within the U.S. Again, the whole foreign corporation thing is a whole can of worms that you might not want to open, or you might just be able to legally register it in one of these 3 Canadian provinces, head up there for a couple days real quick, get the thing registered in your name. Again, you can get a newer one. You can get one that's only 15 years or older. I would buy one that's already imported in there. I'm sure if you go on Facebook Marketplace or something, they're all over the place up there, just like they are in the U.S. Have Canadian registration on it, and again, being a U.S. citizen, from what I read, according in these 3 provinces, you shouldn't have any issues. So that is pretty much about it for this topic, K-Trucks. Again, I don't think I've made a full dedicated video on this topic yet, so hopefully this helps some of you out. Any comments, feedback, or anything like that, please let me know. This is kind of a new topic for me, and I would definitely love to hear anything from anybody that has dealt with this before, especially anybody that has received one of these letters in the mail or anything like that. How do you go about it? How do you get around it? What do you even do? I mean, are you having difficulty trying to sell these, given the fact that you can't legally drive them anymore, or are you just stuck with a $3,000-$4,000 paperweight in your front yard? So please let me know. UAZ America for Soviet 4x4s. Am I worried about this happening to like UAZs or Ladas or stuff like that? Not necessarily yet. Of course, if enough of them sell over here, that is something I am concerned about, and that's probably part of the reason why I'm going way out of my way to find all these loopholes around it. But as of now, I haven't heard of any states outright banning any Soviet 4x4s or Soviet imports. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.